Tua Tagovailoa's future is obviously in question. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Wednesday, December 28th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
One second. Hey, Scotchy, knock it off. That's the one thing I need you not to do. So, here's the deal. My girl Scotchy, who's been part of the reason that some of these shows have been canceled for a couple of weeks. What happened was, just to recap, is she sprained her little paw, and because it hurt her, she kind of licked it raw, and then it got infected. So we've been battling an infection in her paw, and we went to the doctor yesterday for kind of our final checkup for Scotchy, and he said that she her little wound had scarred over. Like he said we consider this matter resolved. The problem was she was immediately licking the spot just as I came live here. So that's live television for you. So I'm getting her to knock it off, but there she is over there enjoying life as dogs are wont to do. All right. This is a children's program, Scotchy. Anyway, starting at quarterback for the Dolphins in Week 17 against the Patriots is likely Teddy Bridgewater. That's because, as Coach Mike McDaniel said on Monday, Tua Tagovailoa is in concussion protocol for the third time this year. It appears that Miami's quarterback played the entire second half in Week 16 after his head slammed to the turf late in the first half against the Packers. Tua, of course, threw 3 interceptions in the second half. Look, the NFL missed a very similar hit to the one that scarily concussed Tua the first 2 times he was in the protocol. And as a competitor, Tua was like, probably don't want to come out of this game. But you have to imagine that even though the Dolphins' playoff hopes are on the line, they are going to protect Tua, or at least will give the impression that they are protecting Tua. And I think that means Teddy Bridgewater is going to play this weekend. I don't know if Tua is going to suit up for the rest of the year. This is a really horrible situation. It's one that I can't remember seeing anything like. Tua's had some horrific luck, but very clearly he's also been let down a little bit by his team and the NFL. Maybe a lot of bit let down by his team in the NFL. His future, he's going to have to make some decisions in the future. And unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to see him again this NFL season. Questionable to play this week in our first running back spot is the Titans' Derrick Henry. Henry is dealing with a hip injury and missed practice on Monday, but got in a limited session on Tuesday. Now, normally, I wouldn't even discuss this situation because Henry is clearly just getting some rest on a short week from a couple of dings and dents. But here's the big deal. The Titans game against the Cowboys on Thursday night is utterly meaningless. They could win by 100 or lose by 100, and it would still be the same scenario. They need to beat the Jaguars in Week 18 to win the AFC South. Those counting on Henry in fantasy championships may want to snag rookie Hassan Haskins just in case Mike Vrabel decides to rest his top weapon for essentially what then amounts to be a must-win game in Week 18. Now, Haskins has just 50 rushing yards on the season, but he's been elevated to the number 2 running back role with Dontrell Hilliard landing on IR before Week 15. The Cowboys are giving up 4.4 yards per carry to running backs, and they had given up 12.8 fantasy points to an individual running back in 7 of their last 8 games before limiting Miles Sanders to 65 rushing yards last week. Monitor the Lions' backfield for our running back 2 spot. The Lions still seem committed to their frustrating 3-man running back rotation in Week 16, though Jamal Williams suffered a knee injury last week that could potentially knock him out of championship lineups. He did return to the lineup late in Week 16, but didn't do much of anything. Now, could this finally be a DeAndre Swift blow-up spot? This week, the Lions catch a collapsing Bear defense that got gashed by the Bills last week. Devin Singletary ran for 106 yards and a touchdown, and James Cook ran for 99 yards and a touchdown. Williams wasn't really needed in the fourth quarter with the Lions trailing by multiple scores at the time, so it's possible he was just resting. Now, if Williams does miss time in the final 2 weeks, 2 good matchups against the Bears and the Packers, Justin Jackson would likely see significant run next to Swift, whom the Lions have been reluctant to give significant work to since the opener. His 56% snap share in Week 16 was a 14-game high. Quite frankly, Jackson has looked better than Swift in the second half of the season, so wouldn't be a surprise if he outproduced Swift with Williams out. Christian Watson is dealing with a hip injury in our wide receiver 1 spot. The Packers' rookie wide receiver has been electric this year, but he has struggled to stay on the field. Meanwhile, fellow rookie Romeo Doubs returned to the lineup in Week 15 after a 5-week layoff for a high ankle injury, and he could be thrust into a big role in the final 2 weeks of the season if Watson misses time from the hip injury he suffered against the Dolphins. Coach Matt LaFleur on Monday called Watson day-to-day, that dreaded term that I've always lamented on this program, so we won't know his status until later in the week. Now, Doubs posted 8 catches for 91 yards on 11 targets over the last 2 weeks, and he flashed early in the season with 3 performances of 14-plus fantasy points in weeks 3 through 8 before his injury. The Packers, though, have a pair of premier matchups to end the year in home games against the Vikings and Lions, so Doubs could end the year with a surge. Watson is out. It's possible Tyler Lockett returns to play in Week 17. The Seahawks have been mired in a bad slump, losing 5 of their last 6 games. But DK Metcalf and Lockett have managed to avoid being dragged down too much by that, ranking as the PPR wide receiver 11 and 12, respectively, by fantasy points per game over that span. Lockett is questionable for this week after missing last week with a finger injury, while his replacement Marquise Goodwin is coming off a goose egg after injuring his wrist during Week 16. All of the Seahawks have ridiculously tough matchups with the Jets' awesome secondary this week. It is a must-win game for Seattle to avoid falling out of the playoff hunt, though. And if you want me to put a wager on it, I think Lockett plays. Oh, and by the way, I also think he's their best wide receiver. That's just that's a little Dolan hot take for you. And in our flex spot, Jalen Hurts might return to action. Hurts missed Week 16 with a shoulder sprain, and the Eagles made too many mistakes to lock up the NFC's number 1 seed against Dallas, though no one should be blaming Gardner Minshew for that. Nonetheless, Hurts is the one of the two who is an MVP candidate, and his return to the lineup, which our Dr. Edwin Porras believes is completely feasible, could give this team a big boost. The Eagles still have to win one of their final 2 games to clinch the top seed and a bye. In Week 17, the Saints come to town for Philly's first crack at it. We do know, oh, by the way, the Eagles also have the Saints' first-round pick. While I don't expect, like, Jason Kelce or Jalen Hurts to care about that, the organization does, so there's more incentive for the Eagles to win. We do know the Saints have a mediocre pass rush, but also that Philly will be down right tackle Lane Johnson until the playoffs start with an abdominal strain. Johnson is the best right tackle in football and hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years, so that's a big loss for either Hurts or Minshew. The Eagles can lock up the NFC's number 1 seed and some much-needed rest with a victory. If Hurts plays, the designed runs might be less of a factor, but you still got to start him. Thank you for joining me for this edition of the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. We only have a couple more of these to go this year. I can't believe we're in Fantasy Championship Week. But if you were playing in fantasy playoff contests or you just want to get in on the ground floor for 2023, go to fantasypoints.com and subscribe to our super early bird special. It is 30% off. You don't need a promo code. You just go there, click on subscribe, renew your subscription, get a new subscription, and it is 30% off. It is the best deal we will have all year. No promo code we're going to hand out all year is going to do better than that. That deal runs up through the Super Bowl, so you want to get in on the ground floor. I'll talk to you at fantasypoints.com. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.